Today's webinar is on air curtain applications across every industry and facility type. This is a new 8-page brochure that we're going to go over for you. Thank you so much for joining us. We opened this webinar actually to our customers, which is something that we rarely do. So thank you again. Our presenter today is Curtis Rosol, our business development engineer, and I'm going to pass it over to Curtis. Curtis?
All right, thanks, Jasmine. Yeah, first and foremost, thanks everyone for your time today. So like Jasmine said, I'm Curtis Rosol, business development engineer here at Mars. So today, we're going to be talking about air curtains, and really the goal here, it's a couple things, right? It's going to be pretty short for the most part. We're going to try to keep it to 20 minutes, right? Keep everyone engaged. It's really just going to cover a top-level overview on what air curtains are, the benefits they provide, and then some application examples. So whether you're someone that's fairly familiar with air curtains, or someone that's on the newer side of the knowledge of air curtains, hopefully everyone's going to be able to learn something new today. So that being said, we'll go ahead and jump into the presentation here. So this is just a quick look at the agenda. I'll start out doing a brief overview on how air curtains work and the benefits they can provide. Then I'll just show you guys a quick list of some of the top industries where they're specified and installed. And then that'll just be followed by, again, some application examples and various installation examples after that. And then I think at the end we're doing a raffle as well for a $50 gift card. So those of you that stay on, I believe we'll be doing that raffle after the presentation here. All right, so starting out again just with how air curtains work. Again, very top level. Really all we're doing with air curtains is we're using a controlled stream of air to separate two environments through an opening. So the general idea there is we're using air as an insulator. Very similar to the same kind of theory behind how a coffee cup sleeve works, right? So that air, or the space in between the coffee cup and your hand, is what's preventing your hand from getting burned on that hot cup of coffee, and we're essentially doing the same thing here, just with a moving stream of air. So that's kind of the top level overview of how air curtains work. Now there's numerous benefits to air curtains. This is kind of, I'd say, the main ones here broken down. First and foremost, and probably the most common, is repelling dirt, dust, debris, flying insects. I know a lot of you probably know air curtains as fly fans, so that was kind of how they started, was for those fly fan applications, and it's still a very common application today. We can also reduce building heating and cooling costs, which is a really big benefit of air curtains. Those of you that deal with electrification or are familiar with that, I know air curtains are going to play probably a pretty big role in that, right? As all the HVAC equipment becomes electric, the demand on the grid and the cost of those utility bills are going to continue to go up, and using an air curtain to help maintain those building temperatures and reducing cycling of compressors, I think, is going to be a really big energy savings component. So really big benefit there. We can also decrease product loss, whether that's in a production plant, if you need to have specific interior temperatures or humidity levels for quality control reasons. That's a really big benefit. We can also decrease product loss in cold storage applications, right? So if you're having a lot of cold air escaping from a cold storage room, that can cause spoilage issues. It can promote, again, humidity getting into that cold storage room, promoting mold growth and things like that. So air curtains really good there as well. We can also enhance indoor air quality and overall customer experience. That would typically be more in retail store applications, or just overall cleanliness of that interior building space that we all work and breathe in our everyday lives. We can also improve safety. Safety is a really big one as well, especially when we're talking about air curtains in more industrial settings, or again, maybe something like cold storage, where Condensation buildup can occur on the floors. Ice buildup can occur on, on the floors outside of a freezer door. If you got people walking in and out of that, or even forklifts driving through those openings, that can be definitely a safety hazard if there is some sort of pooling on the floor there. And air curtains is just a way to help that evaporation process can be really big. We can also replace strip curtains, which can be a big safety concern in a lot of applications, mainly cold storage. I'll touch on that actually a little bit later on, but just another keynote for how air curtains can, provide more of a safe work environment. And then lastly, we can actually sanitize with air curtains as well, which again, I'll talk about in a little bit here. Those mostly focus around what we call our Clean Air series products, which actually come with some sort of sanitation technology, whether that's a UV light or a HEPA filter, or an ionizer. We can actually help sanitize the air as well. So most common industries that were specified and installed, again, just a list of our most common here. This was actually gathered using analytics from our website traffic. So we were able to kind of analyze that and see what clientele or which customers visit our website the most. Sake of time, I won't go into all these individually, but just as a top level kind of overview, I would say those first couple, so the manufacturing warehouses, distribution, the food service space, maybe even grocery stores, those are typically mostly fly control applications. Moving on there, though, convenience stores, educational institutions, hospitals, terminals, those are typically more entry doors, exit doors, more temperature control applications. And then cold storage, I've kind of talked about that briefly so far, but that's in a category of its own, I'd almost say, right? When we're typically dealing with very cold temperatures and very hot and humid ambient or even just ambient temperatures on the other side of that door, your energy savings or your need for temperature control is going to be a lot more noticeable or apparent in those applications. Retail, sports venues, car dealerships, again, very big for entry doors, and then pest control and those custom and specialty options. Those kind of vary on a case-by-case basis. I feel like we're always seeing new and unique applications for air curtains, and I would encourage everyone to always reach out to either your local rep or to us if you think you have a unique application where an air curtain could possibly benefit you. All right, so moving into some of the application examples here. Start off with probably the most common everyone's familiar with for the most part would be customer entrances. So that's your entry doors, typically in that 7 to 10 foot range. For these applications, we're typically using our low pro or standard series units. So in the example at the top there, the convenience store entrance, we have one of our low pros installed on the inside of the entry door there. Again, probably one of our most common applications. We can also do our standard units, like I mentioned. Those are typically for entry doors. If you need a little bit more airflow, maybe you're more focused around fly control. And like I said, we can do standards for that. The example you see on the bottom there is a grocery store entrance. It's actually an exterior installation. So, for whatever reason that might be, we can install air curtains on the outside of the door as well. Another thing to note here is we do have NSF 37 approved models available for entry doors. So that would be our LP N and our N2 series, which you see at the top there. Good for 7 feet with that NSF 37 applications. We also do have heat options available. Now, those are only for non-NSF units and only indoor applications. But again, if you're in a cold weather climate area, could be pretty beneficial to use heat with your air curtain. And for these models, we have electric, steam, and hot water options available. Next tier of applications that we're showing here would be receiving doors, interior openings, and patio doors. So this would, again, I would call that as the next step up from those entrance doors, the entry doors, excuse me. These would typically be our standards and our HVs. More for fly control applications for the most part, but again, depending on the height of your opening, you could be in one or two of the other models as well. But one of our most common applications that you see there is the kitchen receiving back doors. Those of you in the food service industry, you're probably dealing with those the most. That one is actually one of our NH2 series, so NSF 37 approved models, and again, very common in the food service space for mainly fly control for those back doors. We can also do interior openings like you see in the middle picture here. This was actually a really cool opportunity we did with a beer distributor where we installed the air curtain here inside a cold storage room. They were dealing with condensation issues. So the warehouse you see on the other side of the door there was really hot and humid, especially in the summer months. And it was actually damaging the cardboard boxes that the product was being stored in there. And installing the air curtain in that application actually reduced the amount of damaged boxes per the customer by roughly 50%. So they saw really good savings there. Again, not just from temperature control, but from a product savings really as well. So really cool application there. We also do a lot of patio dining areas that you see on the bottom there. I know really common thing that we're seeing nowadays is, a lot of restaurants like to have an open seating atmosphere where they've got big roll-up doors or accordion style doors that open up to the outside environment and obviously a really cool atmosphere to dine in, but you also introduce potential issues with fly control or temperature control as well. And using air curtains in those applications can help prevent those issues to some extent as well. And then similarly, we do have heat options available for these, electric, steam, and hot water. And then our HV, we can also do indirect gas-fired heat if that's what your building requires. And as we kind of go into our larger units, you'll see that's an option we can provide for those as well. Okay, next category is going to be our architectural series. So that's going to focus more around our Quiet Pro, so the QP, and our Phantom series, the PH models listed at the top there. So the QP is the exposed version of the architectural unit. The idea there is, it's a little bit more sleek design. It's got a aluminum finish on it. As you see on the bottom there, that's the office building entrance that displays one of our QP8s. So, with that silver trim over or around the door, looks a little bit nicer. Our Quiet Pro, as the name says, it's actually about 25% quieter than comparable units. So if sound, I know that's a big complaint people have about air curtains typically. If that's something, you or your customer is looking to solve, Quiet Pro could be a good option for that. And then we also have our Phantom series as well, which is actually recessed in the ceiling or a soffit above the door. I know that's really popular with architects who, might not want to see an air curtain directly above that entry door, but they still want to have the benefits that an air curtain provides. So a couple of examples where we're using those. And again, heat options similar to the ones previously, electric, steam, and hot water. I believe our QP10 series is only electric heat, so just something to note there. That's why we excluded it from the heat options there. Last kind of category of units we can provide is our dock doors, which probably has the largest range of models. So, if you're dealing from something as small as like a 10-foot roll-up door, something that our standard series could help you with, all the way up to 30+ foot openings where we have our BD units, our belt-driven units, for those really large applications. And again, these are typically more for warehouses, shipping, receiving doors, manufacturing plants, really just facilities with larger openings. Where again, the bigger the opening, the bigger problem you're potentially going to have. So you'll probably see a more significant either energy savings or fly control element, in these applications if you're able to use air curtains. And then again, heat options listed there at the bottom as well. Going to talk about cold storage a little bit. So I know I've talked about this a little bit here so far. It's a little bit unique, but I feel like I mentioned earlier, there's probably the most savings or the most noticeable benefits in cold storage applications. Now you'll typically see air curtains in one of two installs here. So, something more like a walk-in cooler entrance on that top left image, that would probably be like our low pro. And then if you have like a larger, maybe fabric roll-up door or cold storage or freezer room, you would probably be in our standard series as well for that. A lot of times we'll have customers install our units vertically as well on the side of the door. If you've got a really tall and narrow door and that aspect ratio, is a little bit complicated. We can do vertical installs as well, and that actually sometimes helps promote evaporation off the floor a little bit better too. But the benefits here, kind of as I mentioned earlier, a little bit different. First and foremost, we can replace plastic strip curtains, which is huge from a safety perspective. I know they get dirty, they're hard to see through. We've had numerous accounts of people saying, hey, we've had accidents with forklifts driving through and not seeing, produce or product on the other side of those strip curtains and, causing damage and stuff like that. And then the temperature and humidity control, again, probably being one of the biggest benefits from the cold storage side. Like I mentioned earlier, not only are we able to keep all that expensive cold air into the cold storage room, but we're also able to help maintain, decent humidity levels. So, that way we're not having damage on boxes like I was talking about earlier, just from that condensation buildup, or even something like mold growth as well, which can occur in those damp environments. Options we have available for cold storage, really it's kind of one or the other here. So electric heat is a option we can provide, typically more for freezer applications. And the idea there is, it seems counterintuitive, but we're actually using the electric heat to help promote evaporation. So, reduce the amount of frost buildup either on the fabric door or on the floor directly underneath that door. With freezers, we can only install the air curtains on the outside. With cooler applications, though, we can install air curtains either on the outside of the door or the inside. So on the outside, again, you can use electric heat if you wanted to use that as an evaporation, promote evaporation. You can also use our UV lamps as well in cooler applications. We've actually done a lot of studies on that recently and got pretty promising results with our UV units actually reducing mold growth on produce in these cold storage rooms. And the thought there is we can actually increase the shelf life of the product that's being stored in there. So really cool application there, I think, for cooler applications, again, other than just that thermal separation we can provide. The last series we're going to talk about here is going to be our clean air series. And the idea here is it's that extra level of sanitation, right? So not only are we able to separate two environments with the air curtains, we can also use these sanitation technologies to help actually clean that interior space, the air in that interior space. So we really have three main technologies we can use. First one being our UV units. We can use those up to 10 feet. Just to keep things simple, with UV, all we're doing is we're killing the pathogens and organisms that are being drawn into the air curtain through the intake screen. The idea there is, everything will get, most of it will get deposited inside the unit, and the UV light can kill it there. The other options we can provide, we can also do HEPA filter units. Those also come with pre-filters, but the idea there is we're capturing those particulates and then obviously disposing of those filters as needed. Our last example is our VHP unit. So that's going to be all three of our sanitation technologies: captures, kills, and neutralizes particulates. So we actually have a UV light that does the killing, our HEPA filters that capture particulates, and then we actually include a bipolar ionizer as well, which attaches to those pathogens or particulates and makes them heavy. And the idea there is they'll fall out of the airstream. So really cool, kind of another application we can do with air curtains. I think a common misconception is these are only for clean room, hospital, laboratory applications, which they definitely are. Interior space separation is definitely an application, but I think these also have merit for other applications that are more common, such as customer entrances that you see there for a food bank. I think they can be really applicable for, walk-in clinics or doctors' offices where there's a lot of, sick people kind of in that waiting area and pathogens are getting airborne there. We can also use them through pass-through windows or receiving doors, right? If you're looking to mitigate maybe some of those odors caused from, in a pass-through window application like car exhaust, or receiving doors, kind of like you see in the example here. There's that dumpster in the back alley there, and that UV light in that air curtain can hopefully help, prevent any of those odors from coming in the building. So that's that concludes the presentation. Again, thanks everyone for your time. I'll more than happy to stick around for a few minutes if anyone's got any questions. I guess Jasmine, if you want to read those off, more than happy to answer anything that comes up.
Thank you so much, Curtis. Yeah, we do have a question here. So, question number 1, is there a certain temperature restriction when it comes to applications with cold storage or a colder environment?
Yeah, so I would say, I mean, typically as we get into, I don't think there's a hard cutoff. I would say if you're getting under that 32 degrees, more in those freezer applications, that's where we would recommend just keeping the air curtain on the outside to make sure it's running properly. But for the most part, cold storage applications are okay either way.
Yeah, and if you are interested, or if you have a cold storage application, our engineering team created a survey that you could fill out, or actually a form, and you just input all that information, and you work alongside our team in order to determine exactly what's the best air curtain for your application.
Yeah, that's a good point too, Jasmine. We do have that form, which if either your local rep or whoever, or if you reach out to us, we can provide you with. And cold storage having a few more elements that really need to be, I guess, analyzed, before just giving you a straight up, solution for your, I guess, application. We really just want you guys to fill that out and send it into our engineering team so they can kind of weigh all that out and make sure we're providing you a proper solution depending on where the cold storage room is, what the ambient relative humidity temperatures are, and stuff like that. So it does get a little bit more involved. Definitely get our engineering team involved for those applications.
All right. Question number 2, what is the effectiveness of air curtains?
Yeah, that's a good question. So generally it's around 70 to 80% effectiveness with air curtains. Now I will say that does bring up another good point. I would recommend for those of you just curious on the ROI of using one of our air curtains, we actually do have an ROI calculator on our website. And I would advise, again, those of you that are interested in that, definitely check that out. And you can get a good gauge of either, what you could save on either your electricity bills based on the parameters you enter, or if you have a unit that you're looking to purchase it, we can actually give you an ROI on that specific unit you're looking at.
I've also included the link to the ROI calculator within the chat in case you're interested. That link is for the full version of the ROI, so it gets into all the little details, but we also offer a light version, which can also be found on our website under resources. Question number 3, I noticed that some air curtains are mounted inside of the building and others on the outside. Is there a preference?
Yeah, I would say, if you can, I would mount the air curtain on the inside of the building. That's going to keep the unit cleaner and it's going to allow it to last longer. If it's installed outside, you can do an outside installation as long as it's not directly exposed to the elements. But yeah, typically if you can install it on the inside, it's definitely more important for temperature control applications that you install it on the inside, but fly control not so much. If it just makes more sense, maybe you don't have adequate space on the inside of the door. As long as, again, it's not exposed directly to the elements, it's typically okay to put it on the outside for those.
At what wind speed does an air curtain become ineffective?
So wind, to give you an exact answer, I would have to I would have to recruit one of our engineers.
Hey, Kurt. I can answer that question. So, an air curtain can work if there is wind only if the building is pressure is balanced with respect to the outside. Frank has this good analogy. He says if you have a balloon, you can blow into it, and there's pressure inside the balloon that's going to resist what you blow. Right. That's if you take that analogy. If the pressures are balanced on both sides, there is going to be no movement of wind, even if there is outside wind. Only if there is negative pressure in your building, then the outside wind is going to blow through your building. In those kind of situations, an air curtain will not help. But if your building pressure is balanced, even if you have 10, 15 miles per hour wind outside, it will still be blocked by the air curtain. And the easiest way to find out is if you open the door, if the building pressure is balanced, the wind is going to penetrate through your opening only by a few feet, maybe like 5 or 6 feet. But if the wind is blowing through the opening into your building from one opening to the other opening, then you either have negative pressure or a wind tunnel effect, and unfortunately an air curtain can't help you in those kind of situations.
Do you have a detail for when a roll down security shutter and the air curtain have to be on the same side of the wall?
Not sure. Naga, do you want to?
Yeah, I think it's the security shutter, in my opinion, is the one that opens to the outside. If that's the case, you can have the air curtain on the outside, but just make sure that it is not going to block the security door in case if it has to be opened. If it does, or if it has some kind of an obstruction, just use whatever brackets that we have online to offset the air curtain so it doesn't obstruct. But from a functional standpoint, in terms of flight control or thermal separation, it really doesn't matter if you have the air curtain on the security shutter side or the other side.
Awesome.
But if we didn't answer your question, just send us an email and we'll try to explain better.
And one final question that I see here. So for product assistance, what is the best way to contact Mars?
First and foremost, definitely reach out to your local rep if you have a contact. If not, you can reach out to our factory. I would just recommend starting with our customer service or sales inbox. So just sales@marsair.com would be a good place to start. And then, obviously if we have representation where you're at, we can definitely put you in touch with the local rep and they can help you further. Thank you everyone for your time today.